Here we have an example, solving cosine squared of x minus 1/8 equals 0 on the interval 0 to 2 pi. So let me bring it down here. Cosine squared of x minus 1/8 equals 0. So I'm trying to solve that equation for x. So x is, there inside of a cosine squared, and I want to find out what values of x between 0 and 2 pi make that thing true. Okay, so how do we go about it? Well, let's go back and look at the notes. Notice what we have is a cosine, only one trig function to the second power. So going back to the notes, you can find them here. I went past them. So there we go. So the notes, solving trig equations. First off, only one type of trig function? Yeah, we only have one type of trig function. Is it first power only? No, it's second power. Second power only. Yeah, that's what we got. Get it alone, then root and plus or minus root over the sides. So for example, here they have an example. You get cosine squared alone, reduce it, put the root and the plus or minus root. That's what you do when you put a root over both sides. You got to put plus or minus on the number side. And you get to that, and then you separate that into the two different answers, the plus and the minus. And then you either go to the unit circle or go to number 3 if the numbers are not in the unit circle. Okay, so there's the game plan. So first step, let's add 1/8 to both sides. There we go. Cosine squared of x equals 1/8. And now, next step, let me bring it down here, is to do the root. And we're going to do root, and plus or minus. Remember, that's very important, right? Just think about an equation like x squared is 9. You know that -3 or +3 plugged in make that true, right? Like -3 squared is 9, just like +3 squared is 9. So the real answers are plus or minus. Do you see why we need to do plus or minus? If you just did a root and did not do plus or minus, you'd only get the 3. Square root of 9 is 3. You got to do plus or minus, that way you get both answers. I'm just proving to you the truth of that. So when you do root on both sides, you got to do plus or minus to get both the answers. Okay, so where does that leave us? These guys cancel, right? A root is the opposite of a square. So cosine of x is plus or minus the square root of 1/8. Like that. Now, square root of 1/8, that is not on the unit circle, the best I can tell on this thing. This is not a unit circle answer. So we're going to have to break these into the two different parts. So cosine of 8 is plus the square root of 1/8, or cosine of x is minus the square root of 1/8. We break it into the two cases. Now, for each of these cases, what do we do now? Well, that's not on the unit circle. Is it? Square root of 1/8. That's not one of our values. That's not like square root of 3/2 or a half or something like that. Let's go back to the notes. So what do the notes say? Right here. Okay, so we get the two different things. Finally, take each part to the unit circle and get the two answers. If the values are not in the unit circle, well, see, these values were on the unit circle, but our values are not, then see number 3 below. So I got to jump down to number 3, and we must use our calculator. So after getting the sine, cosine, or tangent alone, we have cosine alone, then take the inverse sine or cosine on both sides, but before hitting inverse on the calculator, change the number on the other side to be positive, even if it was negative at first. Okay, so it's that whole process again. So this one already is positive, so I'm just going to hit cosine inverse, and it cancels out, right? That's how we get down to the x. That's how we get rid of the cosine, by doing cosine inverse on both sides, because cosine inverse is the opposite of cosine, and it cancels it out. So then I've got to take cosine inverse of the square root of 1/8. So let me hit that on my calculator. Make sure you're in radian mode on your calculator here. Cosine inverse, square root of 1/8. I'm getting 1.2094. Okay, so 1.2094. Now, over here, same thing, but we're supposed to change to positive. So this one's going to become positive, like that. And then again, we do cosine inverse, and these cancel. And cosine inverse, well, we just did that. It's going to be the same number, 1.2094. So this is weird. They come out the same at first. Right, they do at first. But remember that, let me box them so we're clear what the original question was before we get into all the messy detail. That was the original question there. Here was the original question there. So in other words, this one was negative, and this one was positive, right? So this one was positive, this one was negative. Okay, so, I mean, we changed to positive for just a minute to get this answer. All right, so now what? Let's go back to the notes again. So then it says, realize now that your answer is an angle in the first quadrant. Why? Because we changed the right side number to be positive. All trig functions are positive in the first quadrant. In the first quadrant. That's right. Everything's, remember, all students take calculus. Everything's positive in the first quadrant. So by changing it to positive, we made it a first quadrant answer. Now that's not really where it belongs. We're going to use that to move it to the two quadrants where it really belongs. So next is we need to find the two quadrants where our answer will be using all students take calculus with the quadrants where they're positive. And then use these formulas depending on the two quadrants you need. So in other words, this original question right here was positive. So we're talking about which two quadrants. Let me get this here. So the all, oops, the wrong mode here. All students take calculus. We're talking about where, what was the original question here? Where is cosine positive? So which two quadrants? This one and this one, right? All are positive here, and the cosine is positive there. So those are the two quadrants where cosine is positive, whereas over here, again, the all students take calculus, we want cosine negative. This side is cosine negative. So what are the two quadrants for cosine negative? Well, this one and this one. Gotcha. So is that making sense? So now, we're going to have an answer here and an answer there. And we're going to have an answer here and an answer there for the various cosine questions. Okay, now this answer 1.2904, same thing here, 1.294, that's a first quadrant answer, right? Because we made it positive. This is a first quadrant answer, which is great. It's right here, 1.20. In fact, I don't like to do it that way. Let me try to do it a little better. Put it right here, 1.2094, like that. It's a first quadrant answer. And it is over here as well. Let me put it in here. 1.2094. That's a first quadrant answer. And we want a first quadrant answer on this side, so we're going to keep it. And then the other answer we need is we need the answer coming down this way. Same amount, 1.2094. In fact, actually, I've already just said I like to write it the other way. 1.2094. We need to find that same spot in the fourth quadrant. How do we find that same angle in the fourth quadrant? By same angle, I mean it's the same distance from the x-axis. How do we find that same spot in the fourth quadrant? Well, we're talking about the angle that goes from 0 all the way to there, right? They all start at 0, and they go all the way to there. That's the angle. How do we find that angle? Well, can you picture it? Can you see it? If you go all the way to here, that would be 2 pi, and then you back up the 1.2904. So this angle is going to be 2 pi minus 1.2094. Do you see that? It's all the way around 2 pi back up 1.2094. So use your calculator, take it out, use the pi button, 2 times the pi button, minus 1.2094. I'm getting 5.0738, and that is the fourth quadrant answer, the other answer. So we have the first quadrant answer, which was 1.2094, right? That's the so that's the two. We need a first quadrant answer and a fourth quadrant answer for that side. So there they are, first and fourth. Now, on the other side, kind of do a little dividing wall there. On the other side, we need a second and third quadrant answer. Again, this is 1.2094 from there to there, and 1.2094 from there to there, right? They're always off the x-axis by the same amount. They're the same reference angle. They refer to the x-axis, same distance to the x-axis, same distance from, with reference to the x-axis. So they're going to be all the same trig. They're going to be the same cosine, same sine, tangent, secant, etc. They're going to be all the same values except for plus or minus, other than the plus or minus. So the cosine's going to be the same there. The cosine's going to work out. It's just we need, for this side, we need cosine negative. Well, cosine's negative in the second and the third quadrants, right? That's where he's negative. So we need the two answers there, second and third quadrant. How do we do it? Well, it's going to be from 0 all the way to there. So what's that? How are we going to find that? Well, that's going to be, if you think about going all the way to this line, that'd be pi, and then back up the 1.2094. So the second quadrant answer is going to be pi back up 1.2094. Use your pi button, figure out what that is. And I'm getting 1.9322. And then the third quadrant answer, over here, let's do the third quad, how are we going to get to the third quad answer? Well, that one's going to be from 0 all the way to there. So what's that? How do you figure that out? Well, that's going to be all the way to pi again, and then add, right? It's beyond pi. It's pi plus instead of pi minus. Pi and then beyond, not pi and then go back, like the second quadrant was. It's pi and keep on going 1.2094 more. So use your pi button again. This time add 1.2094 to get your third quadrant answer. I'm getting 4.35099, so I'll say 10. There's the third quadrant answer. And so we found, now those formulas are all right here. You don't have to memorize them or anything. See, there they are. They're telling you, we need to find the two quadrants using all students take calculus, and then your two answers in the two quadrants, and there's how you do it. If you're in the first quadrant, no change. If you're in the second, there's what we thought, pi minus your answer. Third, it's pi plus. Fourth, it's 2 pi minus. We just did all those, and there's an example in which I'm walking you through it. All right. So there we go. So we found all four of those are answers then. You can type them in any order. 1.2094, 5.0738, 1.9322, 4.3510. There they are. Four different answers. So it was all about getting the cosine alone right here, and then square rooting both sides. Don't forget the plus or minus. That gave us the two options, the plus and the minus, and each of those led to two answers, right? We changed them to plus first, right here. We changed to plus to get the first quadrant version, and then we realized, okay, what are the two places where cosine is positive? First and fourth, right? Because this was the cosine positive side. And then what are the two places where cosine is negative? Second and third. We found the answers using the 1.2094 in each of those quadrants. So there's the four different quadrant answers.